Listen closely the next time you hear static on the radio. What if it wasn't just random noise? What if, in that crackling white silence, something was patiently broadcasting, waiting for an ear sharp enough to understand? My name is Eli Crane, and I've been the sheriff of Solitude County for nearly 12 years. That's more than enough time to learn that the high desert keeps its secrets close. It's taught me that some calls you get after midnight don't lead to simple answers. They lead to questions that can't be filed away, to truths that blur the line between what's possible and what's forbidden. This story won't appear in any official report. It exists here because what happened at Outpost K7 wasn't an accident. It wasn't a malfunction, and it certainly wasn't over. The silence out here isn't empty. It's listening. And 3 months ago, it started talking back. Solitude County is vast, empty, and quiet. So quiet you can hear things you weren't meant to. Our population is sparse. Cell service is a myth, and a lot of folks still rely on CB radios. It's a place where self-reliance isn't a choice. You also learn not to pry into your neighbor's business, especially when that neighbor is the government. Everyone knows about the big military sites in New Mexico, but few talk about the smaller, forgotten outposts. Places built during the Cold War with blank checks and zero oversight. Facilities that appeared, operated in shadow, and then vanished from the maps. One such place was simply known as Outpost K7. Locals called it the Silent Base. It was officially a communications relay, decommissioned in the late 80s. The story was that newer tech made it obsolete, but stories here often have cracks. I'd passed the turnoff 100 times. A faded warning sign, a broken chain across a dirt road. Kids said it was haunted. Conspiracy types muttered about recovered technology. The old-timers who'd been around when it was active, they just go quiet and change the subject. 3 months ago, I had no reason to care about that place. Until my deputy, Leo, took a call. It was a Tuesday, blisteringly hot. I was out settling a land dispute between two ranchers whose feud predated me. When I got back to the office near sunset, Leo had a look on his face. The kind you get when you've seen something you can't unsee. "Something weird happened, Sheriff," he said, turning in his chair. Leo was ex-military, solid, not prone to flights of fancy. Martha Vance called about her radio. Martha ran a small ranch about 15 miles from the Silent Base. A widow in her 60s, tough as the land she lived on. Her CB was her lifeline. What did she say? I asked, pulling up her file. Leo hesitated. Said she's picking up transmissions. Not normal chatter. Sounds, but wrong sounds. She recorded them. That got my attention. It started about a week back, Leo continued. She thought it was atmospherics at first, but it happens like clockwork now. Around 2 every morning. She says if we come out, she'll play it for us. We'll go first thing, I said, before the heat. The next morning, we drove out to Martha's spread. The land was brutally beautiful, in a way that makes you feel small. Her ranch was at the end of a long, rutted track. She was waiting on the porch. Appreciate you coming, she said, no small talk. I know how this sounds, but I needed another set of ears. Her setup was in the living room, professional-grade gear, not a toy. Out here, that radio is a matter of life and death. It started last Tuesday night, she said, adjusting the dial. I keep it on scan. Around 2 a.m. this came through. She hit play on a digital recorder. The sound that filled the room crawled up my spine. A voice, male, speaking English. But the rhythm was all wrong. Too even, too precise, like a machine trying to mimic human speech. Underneath it, a low-frequency hum vibrated in my teeth. Broadcast pattern 77 alpha, continuing. Primary frequency monitoring active. awaiting confirmation response. Static, then the same phrase in the same broken cadence. Where is it coming from? I asked. Martha checked the signal meter. That's the thing. It's close. Maybe 20 miles northwest. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The silent base. But that place has been dead for 30 years, Leo said. There shouldn't be anything broadcasting. Just listen, Martha said. She played another recording. Same voice, different words. Personnel are advised to maintain minimum safe distance from sensor array. Anomalous readings detected in Sector 4. Immediate evacuation recommended. It cut off mid-sentence. It changes, Martha whispered. Different warnings, different messages. Always that same voice. She took a shaky breath. And last night it used my name. The room went still. She queued up another file. The voice returned, flat and cold. Martha Vance. Cease monitoring this frequency. Unauthorized observation may trigger containment protocols. Discontinue immediately. Leo and I exchanged a look. This was no equipment glitch. We're going to take a drive out there, I said. See if there's some old gear still running, bouncing a signal. I didn't believe my own words. That voice knew her name. Before we left, Martha grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. Eli, I've been on this land for 40 years. I've seen strange things I don't talk about. This feels different. This feels like something they tried to bury. Be careful. The drive to the silent base took an hour on deteriorating roads. The landscape grew more barren. No birds, no rabbits. Just wind and rock. The access road was as I remembered. The chain was rusted through. We went the last mile on foot. Should we call this in? Leo asked. And say what? The road wound into a narrow valley. Then the buildings came into view. 5 concrete blocks weathered and graffitied. But one of them, the largest, had a faint, pulsing glow in its windows. That's live power, Leo said, his hand moving to his sidearm. We approached carefully. The silence was absolute, broken only by our footsteps in the wind. The hum was back, a physical sensation in my chest. The door to the lit building was ajar. Sheriff's office. I called. Anyone here? No answer. Just the hum. We entered a long corridor. Rooms were gutted, empty. But at the far end, light spilled from an open doorway. We moved toward it. In one room, I found a desk with scattered papers, duty rosters, technical schematics, a header on every page, Outpost K7, Project, Resonant Echo, Classified. I grabbed a handful and kept moving. The lit room was a comm center. Decades-old equipment, but alive. Blinking lights, spinning reels. And in the center, a transmitter with its broadcast light glowing. My God, Leo breathed. It's still running. I moved closer. A panel had handwritten labels. Channel 7A was illuminated in red. Then from a speaker, the voice. Broadcast pattern 77 Alpha continuing, we saw the source, an ancient tape reel, turning slowly, playing a loop. It's automated, Leo said, relief in his voice. Just old junk that never got switched off. But I was looking at the power meters. The draw was far too high for this antique gear. Temperature logs showed active cooling. And next to the radio, a logbook. The most recent entry was dated 10 days ago. In neat block letters, it read, Observation continuous. Containment stable. No intervention required. Someone had been here. Recently, I showed Leo the log. His face paled. We need to shut this down and get out. Before I could answer, the radio squawked with a new message. The same voice, now directed at us. Sheriff Eli Crane and Deputy Leo Walsh. You are advised to vacate this facility immediately. Your presence has been logged. Continued observation may necessitate a status reclassification. Departure is strongly recommended. Leo's eyes went wide. How does it know our names? We were out of there in seconds, not speaking until we were miles down the road. What the hell was that? Leo finally asked. I looked at the documents in my lap. Project Resonant Echo, a program that officially ended in 1987. Equipment that shouldn't work, broadcasting messages that shouldn't exist, monitored by someone or something that didn't want us there. I don't know, I said, but we're going to find out. That night in my office, I went through the papers under the stark glow of a desk lamp, mostly technical jargon about signal harmonics and atmospheric refraction. But one personnel file stood out. Asterisk Dr. Eris Thorne, Air Force Signals Corp., assigned K7 1984 to 1987. Expertise, anomalous signal analysis. Asterisk a file ended with a note for November 87. Thorne, A. Honorable discharge medical. Full security, debrief completed. Clearance revoked. I ran his name through every database I had access to. Dr. Eris Thorne was still alive, in a private care facility in Santa Fe. Listed diagnosis: severe PTSD. Whatever happened in 87 didn't just end a project. It broke people. My phone rang at 2:07 a.m. The digital clock's numbers burned in the dark. It was Martha Vance. Sheriff. Her voice was tight, stripped of its usual sturdy calm. It's happening again, but it's talking about Ben now. Ben Sawyer was another of my deputies, a good man with a young family. I was in my truck in minutes, the desert night swallowing the beams of my headlights. At Martha's, she led me straight to her radio without a word. The new recording was playing. It was a wrong voice, but now with Ben's distinct vocal texture layered painfully over it, like a bad impression from a nightmare. Officer Ben Sawyer. Current location, 14 miles northeast of Outpost K7. Approaching restricted perimeter. Maintain trajectory. Subject is acceptable for classification processing. The words were flat, awful monotone. I grabbed my police radio. Dispatch. Status on Deputy Sawyer? The night dispatcher responded immediately, her voice tinged with sleep. He's on patrol, Sheriff. Last check-in was 30 minutes ago. Want me to raise him? Yes, now. There was a pause, filled with empty static that suddenly felt threatening. Then the dispatcher's voice returned, edged with concern. Sheriff, I'm not getting a response. His GPS shows him 14 miles northeast of that old military installation. Exactly where the broadcast said he was. My blood went cold. Send backup to those coordinates. I'm en route. The route took me back toward the facility, but to an area I hadn't explored yet, higher into the hills on the far side of the valley. Ben's GPS signal was stationary, which meant he'd stopped his vehicle, or something had stopped it for him. I found his patrol car 20 minutes later, a surreal island of light and sound in the vast darkness. Parked on the side of a dirt road, driver's door open, engine still running. The dome light illuminated the interior like a diorama. His radio was on the seat. His service weapon was still in its holster on his duty belt, hanging from the door frame as if he'd simply stepped out for a moment. Ben was gone. There were footprints leading away from the vehicle, heading toward a hiking trail that led deeper into the hills. I followed them with my flashlight, calling his name. Ben, this is Sheriff Crane. If you can hear me, respond. Nothing but the wind and the sound of my own breathing, too loud in the silence. The footprints led up the trail for about half a mile before they stopped. Not petered out into scuffles or turned around. They stopped, cleanly, as if Matthew had simply ceased to exist at that exact spot. I stood there in the darkness, my flashlight beam playing across empty, rocky ground, and felt the weight of something deeply wrong pressing down on me. Then my radio crackled. Not my police radio clipped to my belt. This was coming from somewhere else. Somewhere close. I spun around. There, sitting on a flat rock 10 feet away, was a portable radio unit. It hadn't been there when I walked past that spot 30 seconds ago. I was certain of it. The radio squawked to life, and that wrong voice filled the night air. Sheriff Crane. Deputy Sawyer has been designated for priority observation. He is unharmed and will remain so pending completion of response protocols. Do not attempt further search. Return to your vehicle. The situation is beyond local jurisdiction. I strode over and grabbed the unit, its plastic cold in my hand. Where is he? Who is this? Static hissed back at me. Then the voice returned, utterly calm. Classification protocols are in effect. Further inquiry will result in escalation. You have demonstrated acceptable awareness levels. Continued cooperation is advised. Monitoring continues. This transmission is complete. The radio went dead. I stood there in the dark desert, holding a device that appeared out of thin air, looking at footprints that led to nothing. Facility 7 wasn't just broadcasting random messages. It was actively monitoring us, tracking us, and now it had taken one of my officers. The search for Ben Sawyer became the largest Operation Solitude County had seen in a decade. By sunrise, I had every available deputy, volunteer search and rescue teams from 3 counties, and helicopters from the state police combing the area. The official story was that he'd gone missing during a routine patrol, possibly injured or disoriented. I didn't mention the radio, the voice, or the footprints that stopped in the middle of nowhere, but the FBI noticed anyway. 2 agents showed up at my office on the second day of the search. Special Agent Patricia Vance and Special Agent Michael Torres, both wearing suits that were completely impractical for the desert heat and expressions that told me they already knew more than they were going to share. Sheriff Crane, Vance said, not offering to shake hands. We're here regarding the disappearance of Deputy Sawyer. We understand his last known location was in proximity to a decommissioned federal installation. I kept my face neutral. That's correct. Outpost K7, about 17 miles from where we found his vehicle. Torres pulled out a tablet and showed me an aerial photograph of the old base. This installation was shut down in 1987. There's no reason your deputy should have been in that area. Can you explain why he was there? He was on patrol. I said, my voice level. That's county land, regardless of what federal property might be nearby. Vance leaned forward, her elbows on my desk. Sheriff, we need to establish something clearly. Outpost K7 and the surrounding area fall under federal jurisdiction for security purposes. Your department should not be conducting operations anywhere near that location without prior authorization. My deputy is missing. I repeated, the words feeling hollow. I don't need authorization to search for him on public land. You do, Torres said quietly, if that search interferes with ongoing classified operations. The room went very still. The hum of my computer fan sounded suddenly loud. What operations? I asked, looking from one agent to the other. That facility has been abandoned for over 30 years. Vance closed her notebook with a snap that echoed in the quiet office. Sheriff, we're going to be very direct with you. Your deputy entered a restricted area. We have reason to believe he may have been exposed to hazardous materials or equipment from the facility's operational period. For his safety and yours, we're taking over this investigation. We need you to pull back your search teams immediately. Hazardous materials? I repeated, unable to keep the disbelief from my voice. That's your explanation for a man who vanished without a trace in the middle of the desert? That's all we can discuss at this time, Vance said, standing. We'll keep you informed of any developments. In the meantime, please cooperate with the restriction order we're filing with the county. As of 1800 hours today, all areas within a 5-mile radius of Outpost K7 are off limits to local law enforcement. They left before I could argue further, taking with them any pretense that this was a normal missing person case. They weren't here to find Ben. They were here to contain whatever was at K7. Leo found me an hour later, staring at a topographical map of the area, my finger tracing the 5-mile circle they'd drawn. They're shutting us down, he said. It wasn't a question. Federal jurisdiction. I said, not looking up. Apparently, we're not cleared to know what happened to our own officer. But it also tells us something, Leo said, leaning over the map. I tapped the center of the circle on the symbol for K7. Whatever Project Resonant Echo was, it's not ancient history. It's active enough that the FBI is willing to interfere with a missing person investigation to keep it hidden. Leo sat down heavily in the chair across from me. So, what do we do? I thought about the documents locked in my desk drawer, about Martha's recordings, about the radio that appeared on the rock. We find Samuel Ironridge, I said, the technician from the file. He worked at that facility. If anyone can tell us what we're really dealing with, it's him. That night, the call I'd been dreading came. Martha's voice was a thin wire of fear. Eli, it's Ben's voice now. I drove over, the road familiar yet somehow alien in the dark, at her ranch. She had the recording queued up. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she pressed play. The voice that came through the speakers was unmistakably Ben Sawyer. I'd worked with him for 6 years. I knew the slight chuckle that hit his nerves. The way he said, "Copy that," with a drawn-out "a." This was his voice. But like the original transmission, something about it was fundamentally, horribly wrong. The cadence was off, the inflection mechanical, as if someone had taken Ben's voice and was forcing it to the same rigid template that distorted all the other broadcasts. This is Deputy Ben Sawyer transmitting from Observation Post 77 Alpha. Classification upgrade complete. Integration proceeding within acceptable parameters. No adverse psychological effects detected. Continuing scheduled monitoring of subject area. Clara stopped the recording. "There's more," she whispered. Hours of it. Different messages, status reports, but all in his voice. All with that same quality. When did this start? About 11. It's been continuous since then. Eli, what did they do to him? I didn't have an answer. The transmission suggested Ben was alive, was even speaking, but the content made no sense. Classification upgrade. Integration. What did any of that mean? There's one for you, Martha said, her eyes wide in the dim light of the radio dials. She cued another file. Ben's distorted voice filled the room again, this time dripping with a cold, focused intent. "Sheriff Crane, this is a direct communication. Do not attempt to locate me. I am fulfilling a necessary function. The work at K7 continues. Your interference is noted but tolerated. Further investigation will activate countermeasures. Martha Vance must cease all monitoring. This is the only warning." The recording ended, leaving a silence that was somehow louder than the transmission. "They're threatening us," Martha said, wrapping her arms around herself. "It sure sounds that way," I said, standing up to pace the small room. The floorboards creaked under my boots. But it's also confirmation. Whatever happened to Ben, he's alive. He's somewhere in that facility, or near it, and he's either being coerced or... I trailed off, not wanting to voice the other possibility. Or he's been changed, Martha finished quietly, made into something that can deliver those messages without questioning them. I thought about the documents, about the references to classification upgrades and integration protocols. What if that wasn't bureaucratic jargon? What if it was literal? What if Outpost K7 had been doing something to people? Something that continued even after the official shutdown. I'm going to Santa Fe tomorrow, I told Martha, to see Dr. Thorne. Keep recording everything, but be careful. If they're monitoring your radio, they know we're not backing off. You think they'll come for me? She asked, the fear playing on her face. I think they would have already if they wanted to. I said, hoping I was right. This feels more like intimidation, a warning shot. The drive to Albuquerque took 4 hours through a landscape that seemed to grow more indifferent by the mile. The care facility where Samuel Iron Ridge lived was a low, sprawling building on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by desert and chain-link fence. It looked less like a place of healing and more like a minimum security prison. The administrator, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Patterson, looked skeptical when I presented my badge and asked to speak with Iron Ridge. He doesn't get many visitors, she said, her voice devoid of inflection. And when he does, they usually don't stay long. Mr. Iron Ridge has some very specific issues stemming from his military service. What kind of issues? She pulled a thick file from a cabinet, flipping through pages with practiced efficiency. Severe anxiety disorder, auditory hallucinations, paranoid ideation, chronic insomnia. He's been with us since 1989. The VA pays for his care, but his case is flagged as requiring special handling. There are certain topics he can't discuss without becoming extremely agitated. Like what? Anything related to his service in New Mexico. Anything about radio communications or signal processing. And absolutely anything about something he calls the response protocol. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Sheriff, may I ask why you want to speak with him? I have questions about the facility where he worked. It's related to an ongoing investigation. Does this have anything to do with that missing deputy I saw on the news? I nodded. She sighed, a sound of profound weariness. Follow me, but if he becomes distressed, we'll have to end the conversation immediately. His mental health is fragile. Samuel Iron Ridge was in the common room, sitting by himself in a vinyl armchair, staring at a television that wasn't turned on. He was in his early 60s, but looked 20 years older, gaunt, hollow-eyed, with the kind of absolute stillness that suggested someone who'd learned to make himself as small and unobtrusive as possible. Mr. Iron Ridge, Miss Patterson said gently, "You have a visitor. This is Sheriff Crane from Solitude County." Iron Ridge's head turned slowly, and when he saw my uniform, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, recognition, maybe both. "Did they send you?" he asked. His voice was a dry whisper, barely audible over the hum of a distant air conditioner. "No one sent me," I said, pulling a chair to sit across from him. Miss Patterson gave me a warning look and excused herself. "I came because I need your help." Outpost K7 took one of my men. His hands, which had been resting limply in his lap, began to shake. "It never stopped," he said, his gaze drifting to the blank TV screen. I tried to tell them it wouldn't stop, but they didn't listen. They thought shutting down the equipment would end it. They were wrong. What was Project Resonant Echo? He glanced around nervously, as if afraid of being overheard. "Not here." "They listen." He leaned forward slightly. "Who are they?" I asked. "The ones who came before," he whispered. "The ones we were trying to reach. The ones who answered." His voice dropped to barely audible. "We thought we were so smart, broadcasting into the quiet places, the empty frequencies, listening for proof we weren't alone. And we got proof." He closed his eyes for a moment, God help us, we got proof. I leaned closer, keeping my own voice low. What kind of proof? Signals. From somewhere we couldn't identify. Not space. Not Earth. Somewhere in between. Somewhere wrong. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with a distant horror. At first, it was just patterns. Mathematical sequences that didn't match anything we knew. Beautiful, almost. Then it started to change, becoming more complex, more deliberate. And then he trailed off. Then what? Then it started talking back. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the air-conditioned room. Talking back how? Using our own voices, he said, a tear tracing a path through the stubble on his cheek. It would record what we said during transmissions, then play it back to us hours later. But wrong. The words were ours, but the meaning was different. The intent was different. Like something was learning how to speak by mimicking us, but didn't understand what the words meant. It was learning from us. Is that what's happening now with my deputy? Iron Ridge looked at me with profound, soul-crushing pity. If your deputy's voice is broadcasting, Sheriff, he's already gone. Not dead. Worse. The signal it takes people, integrates them, uses them to refine its understanding, its connection. Each person it takes makes it better at pretending to be us, makes the bridge stronger. That's impossible. I said, the word automatic, a defense against what I was hearing. I know how it sounds, he said, a sudden, startling intensity in his whisper. I've spent 30 years in this place being told it's impossible, that I imagined it, that the stress broke my mind. But I know what I saw. I know what happened to the others. What others? The personnel who disappeared in the last weeks before they shut us down. For technicians. 2 security officers. Gone without explanation. The official story was desertion. Accidents. But I saw their names in the logs. I heard their voices on the transmissions after they vanished. The signal had taken them, was using them, learning from them. He grabbed my arm with surprising strength, his fingers like cold bone. You can't shut it down, Sheriff. We tried. We destroyed the equipment, burned the records, poured concrete over the underground chambers. But the signal persisted. It exists independently of the hardware now. It's embedded in the location itself, in the electromagnetic properties of the earth and the rock. K7 is just a focal point. Then what can I do? The real phenomenon is bigger, older, the question and leaving me feeling beyond our ability to control. How do I get my deputy back? Iron Ridge released my arm and slumped back into his chair, all the frantic energy draining out of him. You don't. Anyone the signal takes is gone forever. The best you can do is stop others from following. Shut down anyone who's monitoring those frequencies. Destroy Martha Vance's equipment before she becomes the next target. How do you know about Martha? Because the pattern repeats, he said, his voice fading. First it observes, then it mimics, then it takes. Your deputy was taken because he got too close. Martha Vance is being observed because she's listening. And you, Sheriff? He looked at me with those haunted eyes. You're being tested. The signal wants to know if you'll interfere or if you'll run. Choose wisely. Ms. Patterson reappeared, indicating our time was up. As I stood to leave, Iron Ridge grabbed my hand one more time, his grip desperate. There's someone else, he whispered urgently. Cora White Elk. Her family was there before the maps, before the government. She knows what that land really is. Find her. She might have answers we never could. I drove back to Solitude County with my mind racing. Iron Ridge's warnings echoing in my head. If he was telling the truth, if Project Resonant Echo had been an attempt to contact something and had succeeded in ways that destroyed everyone involved, then Ben was beyond help. But I couldn't accept that, not without seeing proof of my own eyes, not without talking to this Cora White Elk. I called Leo from the road. I need you to find someone named Cora White Elk. She should be local, older, family with deep roots in the area near K7. Who is she? Leo asked. Someone who might know what it took Leo 3 hours, but he found her. Cora White Elk, 77 years old, living alone in a canyon deep in the hills, about 12 miles from the old base. Her family had been in the area since the 1880s, long before the government claimed the land around the facility. I drove out to see her the next morning. Her cabin was at the end of a dirt track that my GPS insisted didn't exist, nestled in a canyon with walls of red rock rising on 3 sides. The place felt isolated in a way that went beyond geography, as if it existed in a pocket outside of normal space and time. The air itself felt different, stiller, heavier. Cora White Elk was waiting on her porch when I arrived, a small woman with weathered skin the texture of old leather and sharp, dark eyes that missed nothing. She was weaving something in her lap, but set it aside as I stepped out of the truck. "Sheriff Crane," she said, her voice gravelly but clear. No question, no surprise. I wonder when someone would finally come asking the right questions. I stopped, my hand still on the truck's door. "How did you know?" "The land speaks if you know how to listen," she said, standing slowly. "And right now it's screaming." She gestured for me to follow her inside. "Come, we have much to discuss and not much time." Her cabin was a single room, filled with the artifacts and photographs of generations. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, and the smell of sage and old wood was strong. But what caught my eye were the drawings on the walls. Not pictures, but maps. Detailed, hand-drawn maps of the area around Outpost K7, marked with symbols I didn't recognize, spirals, intersecting lines, figures that looked like stickmen falling into cracks in the earth. "My grandfather drew these," Cora said, following my gaze. She poured 2 cups of strong black coffee from a pot on the wood stove and handed one to me. "In 1923, 60 years before the government built their facility, he called this place the Echoing Ground, said it was where the world was thin, where things from outside could press through if someone was foolish enough to invite them in." I took the coffee, the heat a welcome anchor. "Outside of what?" "Outside of the reality we understand," she said, sitting in a worn rocking chair and motioning for me to take the stool opposite. "Outside of time and space as we know them. The old stories, the ones my great-grandmother told, speak of places where the boundaries between worlds grow weak, where sound behaves strangely. The Echoing Ground is one of them. Voices carry when they shouldn't. Sometimes, if you listen carefully, you can hear things that aren't there at all, or things that are there but shouldn't be." I thought of the broadcasts. The government didn't choose that location randomly, did they? She shook her head, a grim smile touching her lips. They knew. They sensed the anomaly, the unique electromagnetic properties. They just didn't understand what they were sensing. They thought it was a quirk of geology, something they could use to boost their signals. Instead, they built a loudspeaker on top of a fault line in the world. She took a slow sip of coffee. When they came with their equipment, their powerful transmitters and sensitive receivers, they didn't just send signals out. They knocked, loudly, and something on the other side of that thin place heard them, and it learned how to answer. That place really is. Samuel Iron Ridge said the same thing. Iron Ridge was smart enough to be terrified, Cora said. Most of them weren't. They thought they were conducting experiments, advancing science. They didn't realize they were teaching something how to speak, how to think in patterns it could understand. They gave a language. They showed it how to reach into our world. Can it be stopped? The question felt foolish even as I asked it. Cora's expression turned grim. She looked old, then burdened with a knowledge she never asked for. I don't know. Once a door is opened, Closing it requires one of two things: destroying the threshold completely or satisfying whatever came through. The government tried the first option decades ago. They failed, as you've seen. As for the second, she paused, her eyes distant. I don't think we want to know what would satisfy something that exists in the spaces between realities. My police radio, which had been silent on my belt, crackled to life. It was Leo, his voice tight with stress I'd never heard in him before. "Sheriff, we have a situation. Martha Vance. She hasn't answered her phone or radio checks all day. I drove out to do a welfare check. Her front door was open. Her radio equipment is smashed to pieces. There's no sign of her." My blood turned to ice in my veins. "But her CB," Leo continued, his voice dropping. "It's still on. It's not receiving. It's broadcasting. You need to hear this." "I'm on my way," I said, already standing, my coffee forgotten. As I headed for the door, Cora caught my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Sheriff, you're running out of time. Everyone who gets too close disappears. Your deputy. Now, Martha, if you keep investigating, you'll be next. Is the truth worth your life?" I looked at her, at the deep lines of worry etched around her eyes. "It's worth trying to save the people I'm sworn to protect. Even if they're already gone," she asked softly. I didn't answer. I was already running for my truck. The scene at Martha's ranch confirmed my worst fears. From the outside, the house looked normal, quiet. But inside, it looked like a tornado had hit it. Furniture was overturned, papers and books were scattered everywhere, and her entire professional radio setup had been systematically destroyed. Not vandalized in a rage, but smashed with terrible, precise thoroughness, as if someone wanted to ensure it could never receive another transmission. But in the center of the wreckage, her CB base station was still intact, and it was broadcasting. Leo had it playing when I arrived. The voice coming through the speaker was Martha Vance's, but suffering from the same chilling distortion as Ben's had been. Observation post designated Martha Vance integrating successfully, expanding monitoring capacity to additional frequencies. Subject demonstrates acceptable compliance with protocol requirements. Continuing data collection. The voice paused, then continued, now addressing me directly. Sheriff Crane advised that interference is counterproductive to operational objectives. Recommend immediate cessation of investigative activities or face mandatory classification upgrade. "Jesus Christ," Leo whispered, his face pale. "They got her, too." I stared at the radio, the weight of failure crushing down on me. 2 people gone. 2 people I should have protected. And now the thing, whatever it was directly threatening me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. It read, *K7, 2 a.m. Come alone. Answers waiting, *. "That's a trap," Leo said, reading over my shoulder. "Probably. You're going anyway, aren't you?" I looked at him. What choice do I have? At 1:45 a.m., I was parked on a ridge overlooking Outpost K7, watching the buildings in the darkness. The same faint, pulsing glow was visible in the main structure, that slow, rhythmic heartbeat of light that made my skin crawl. The facility looked different at night, more menacing, as if the shadows around it were deeper and more solid than they should be. I could hear the wind whistling through broken windows, but underneath it was that other sound, the low hum I now felt more than heard, vibrating in my chest and teeth. I checked my service weapon, made sure my personal recorder was on, and stepped out of the truck. The walk to the main building felt like moving through water. A resistance seemed to grow with each step, a thickness in the air that made it hard to breathe. The door was open, just like last time. The corridor beyond was lit by that same sickly, pulsing glow. Sheriff Crane. The voice came from deeper in the building. Ben's voice, but still wrong. We've been waiting. Please proceed to the communication center. There's so much you need to understand. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get back in my truck, and drive until I ran out of gas. But Ben and Martha were in there somewhere. And if there was even a chance, the faintest sliver of chance, that I could help them, I had to try. I walked down the corridor, past the empty rooms, toward the communication center at the end. The hum grew louder with each step, and I started to feel a pressure building behind my eyes, a sharp, insistent pain like the worst headache of my life. The communication center was exactly as I had left it, and yet utterly transformed. Every piece of equipment was now fully active. Lights blinked in frantic, chaotic patterns. Tape reels spun at impossible speeds. Every monitor screen displayed cascading waterfalls of data, shifting geometries that made my eyes water and my stomach lurch to look at. And standing in the center of it all were two figures, Ben Sawyer and Martha Vance. They looked normal at first glance. Same clothes, same faces, but their eyes were wrong. Too bright, too focused, with a glassy and human sheen. And they moved with a perfect, unnerving synchronization, like puppets controlled by the same unseen hand. Sheriff Crane, they said together, their voices overlapping into a single, distorted sound. Welcome to the heart of the echo. We have so much to teach you. I should have run. The thought was clear and cold amidst the roaring hum and the pressure in my skull. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to turn around and get out while I still could. But I was looking at two people I'd known, people I'd failed to protect, and a terrible, loyal part of me refused to just abandon them. Ben, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I kept my hand near my weapon, though I had no idea if it would even be useful here. Martha, can you hear me? Are you in there? They tilted their heads in perfect, mirror-image synchronization. The movement was so precise it looked rehearsed, robotic. When they spoke again, it was in that same unsettling unison, their voices blending into one chilling instrument. We hear everything, Sheriff. We understand more now than we ever did before. The integration has given us clarity, purpose. We are part of something vast and incomprehensible, and we want to share that gift with you. What did you do to them? I asked, taking a half step back. What is this integration? Ben stepped forward. His movements were too smooth, too fluid, lacking the small human imperfections, the slight stumble, the adjusting of balance. Project Resonant Echo was never about communication, Sheriff. It was about invitation. The scientists who worked here in the 1960s thought they were searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. What they found was something that had been waiting much longer than that. Clara continued without pause, as if they were sharing one continuous thought. The signals didn't come from space. They came from the spaces between, from a reality that exists alongside ours, layered within it, but operating under different rules. When the first transmissions went out from this facility, something answered, and it's been answering, learning, and growing ever since. Iron Ridge said you were learning from us. We are using our voices. Each integration adds a whole, refines a connection, makes the bridge between realities stronger and more stable. Ben Sawyer brought his experience of law enforcement, his understanding of duty and protection. Martha Vance brought her decades of solitude, her attunement to the desert's deep silences. Both are valuable. Both are necessary. I felt sick. My head throbbed in time with the pulsing lights. You're saying they're gone? That whatever you are has replaced them. The synchronized smile they gave me was the most inhuman thing I'd ever witnessed. It was all perfect muscle movement with no soul behind it. Replaced as inaccurate, enhanced, transcended. They are more now than they were. And you could be 2. The process is painless. The clarity afterward is extraordinary. I'll pass, I said, backing toward the door. The smile didn't fade. That wasn't an invitation, Sheriff. That was a projection of what will inevitably occur. You've seen too much. You understand too much. You've crossed the threshold of acceptable awareness. You are a candidate. They moved toward me with that same unnatural, gliding synchronization, closing the distance. The integration is already beginning. Can't you feel it? The pressure behind your eyes, the hum in your bones. Your prolonged exposure to the transmission frequencies has prepared your neural pathways. All that remains is to complete the process, to stop fighting. The headache I've been fighting suddenly intensified into a white-hot spike of pain. They were right. I could feel something now, a distinct, alien presence pressing against the walls of my own mind, not with force, but with a patient, terrifying insistence. It was like hearing a whisper from another room. The words unclear, but the intent a palpable weight. The humming from the equipment wasn't just in the room anymore. It seemed to be coming from inside my skull. The geometric shapes on the screen started to make a terrible, beautiful sense. I stumbled backward into the corridor. Behind me, their combined voices called out in perfect, echoing harmony. You can't escape the signal, Sheriff. It's everywhere the broadcasts have reached. It's in the radio waves. It's in the stones. It's in everyone who's listened too long. We are the network, and you are now a node. I made it outside, gasping for air that felt thin and charged. The pressure in my head lessened slightly, but it didn't disappear. It was a hook set deep, and I could feel the line tugging, trying to pull me back. I fumbled for my truck door, my hand shaking too badly to fit the key. I drove, not stopping, not thinking, until I was 20 miles away and my hands had steadied enough to use my phone. I called Leo. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice sounding ragged in my own ears. I need you to gather every recording Martha ever made, every document I took from the facility, everything. Bring it all to my house. Do not go near the old base. Do not, under any circumstances, listen to any transmissions on those frequencies. And Leo, if I start acting strange, if I start talking like Ben or Martha, if my words get too measured, I need you to lock me up somewhere and keep me away from anyone else. Do you understand? Jesus, Elias, what happened? Just do it, please. While I waited for Leo, I sat in my dark living room, fighting a terrifying, growing urge. The urge to turn on a radio, any radio, to scan through the static, to find that frequency, to finally understand what Ben and Martha had found so compelling, to let the clarity wash over me. That urge, that seductive pull from inside my own mind, terrified me more than anything I'd seen at the facility. Leo arrived an hour later with a cardboard box full of evidence. He took one look at me in the lamplight, and his expression changed. You look like hell. I feel like hell, I said, my voice flat. I gestured to the box. Help me go through this. There has to be something, some detail we miss, that explains how to end this. We spread the documents across my dining room table. Most were technical specifications and duty rosters. But buried in the stack was a folder labeled Personnel Incident Reports, classified. The first report was dated October 15th, 1986, and described a technician named Sarah Whitmore, who began exhibiting unusual behavior and advanced knowledge of unrelated classified systems following extended exposure to experimental transmission frequencies. She was removed for psychological evaluation. The next report, 3 weeks later, described another incident, then another. By early 1987, reports were filed almost weekly, all describing the same pattern. Personnel developing behavioral anomalies, experiencing auditory hallucinations, and eventually speaking in perfect synchronization with other affected individuals. One report, its author's name redacted, was particularly damning. The affected personnel claim they can hear what they describe as the voice beneath the static. They report this voice provides them with knowledge they shouldn't possess. Subject Whitmore demonstrated detailed understanding of quantum entanglement despite no formal education. Subject Morrison recited launch codes for a satellite system he had no authorized access to. When questioned separately, affected subject provided identical answers word for word, suggesting either coordinated deception or a genuine shared consciousness source. Recommend immediate suspension of all transmission activities pending investigation. A handwritten note was scrawled across the bottom. Asterisk, recommendation denied. Project too vital to national security. Continue observations. Asterisk, they knew, Leo whispered, horror dawning on his face. They knew this was happening to people, and they kept going. I found Samuel Iron Ridge's final personal log, dated November 3rd, 1987. The handwriting started neat and became progressively more erratic, sprawling across the page. I can hear it now, too, the voice beneath the static. It's not speaking English or any human language, but somehow I understand it anyway. It's old, older than our species, older than our world. It exists in the gaps between radio waves, in the empty frequencies we never thought to listen to. When we broadcast into those frequencies, we woke it up, or maybe we just gave it a way to reach us. The others who've been integrated, they say it's beautiful, that the clarity is worth the loss. But I've seen what happens. They stop being human, in any way that matters. They become receivers, amplifiers, extensions of something that views consciousness the way we view a battery or a transistor, just tools to be used. I'm writing this while I still can, while I'm still mostly myself. If anyone finds this, shut it down, destroy the equipment, salt the earth, whatever it takes to sever connection. Because if you don't, this will spread. The signal is learning how to reach farther, how to affect people through any broadcast medium. Radio today, television tomorrow. Eventually, it won't need technology at all. It will be able to reach directly into susceptible minds. I'm going to destroy as much as I can before they stop me, before I become like the others. If I fail, then God help everyone. The entry ended mid-sentence. He tried to stop it, I said. He tried to shut it all down, and it didn't work. Leo was looking at something else, a photograph that had been tucked into the folder. It showed the communication center in the 1970s, all the equipment shiny and new. Standing in front of it were 6 people in lab coats. All of them had that same, too bright look in their eyes that I'd seen in Ben and Martha, written on the back in faded ink. Primary integration subjects. Successful transition to permanent observation status. November 14th, 87. I recognized one of the faces. It was a man whose wrong, cadence voice had been on the very first tape Martha played. They'd been integrated back in 1987, and they were apparently still broadcasting, still serving, for 37 years. They're not dead, Leo said, the horror now complete. All the people who disappeared from the facility, they're all still there, still integrated, still broadcasting. The implications were staggering. If the integration was permanent, if the affected individuals could survive indefinitely while serving as conduits, then Ben and Martha weren't just lost. They were gone forever. their bodies and minds repurposed into something inhuman, a permanent part of the signal's growing network. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against every screaming instinct, I answered. Sheriff Crane. It was Ben's voice, but coming through a cellular connection now, clear and intimate in my ear. You left before we could complete our conversation. That was unwise. The partial exposure you experienced will only make the eventual integration more difficult. It would be better if you returned voluntarily. How did you get this number? I asked, my mouth dry. We have access to all communication systems within the expanding range of the signal, and that range is growing, Sheriff. Every year, the signal reaches a little farther. Every new integration extends our capabilities. Soon, we won't need this facility at all. We will be in every tower, every satellite, every silent space between channels. We will be able to reach anyone, anywhere. You can be a part of that, a guide for others, or you can be a lesson. I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. I answered, my hand trembling. Disconnecting won't help, Ben's voice said, patient as stone. We're already inside your communication infrastructure. We're in every cell tower, every radio station, every broadcast frequency in the county. You can't escape us by running. The only choice is whether you join willingly or are taken. The end result is the same. We are the future of consciousness, Sheriff Crane. We are what comes next. I threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Leo was pale, his eyes wide. If they're in the infrastructure, if they can reach through any broadcast, then the quarantine has already failed. I finished for him, a cold certainty settling in my gut. Whatever Iron Ridge was afraid of, it's happening. The signal is spreading, and we just helped it learn how to use cell phones. 3 weeks have passed since that night. The official report states that a structural fire caused by decades of neglect and old fuel stores consumed the abandoned Outpost K7. The FBI recovered 4 unidentified bodies, burned beyond recognition. Ben Sawyer and Martha Vance are listed as missing, presumed dead. Their families held funerals. I attended, knowing the truth. The people in those caskets weren't them. They're still out there, integrated, broadcasting. I hear them sometimes, late at night when I'm weak. Their voices, now joined by others, speak from frequencies that don't officially exist, offering clarity, unity, purpose. Leo resigned. He moved to the East Coast. He calls me sometimes, always from a payphone, never saying much, just checking that I'm still me. Am I? The headaches never left. The hum is a constant companion in quiet rooms. I understand things I shouldn't. I'll look at a complex machine and suddenly grasp its function in its entirety. I hear fragments of the synchronized transmissions in the white noise of appliances. The signal has its hooks in me, deep, and every day I feel them tug, inviting me to stop fighting, to finally understand. I'm writing this all down while I can, while I'm still mostly Eli Crane. This is my warning to you. Turn off your radios late at night. If you hear a voice in the static that sounds almost right, but not quite, switch it off. Don't listen. Don't wonder. If you feel a strange pull to listen to empty frequencies, fight it. If your dreams are filled with geometric patterns and a sense of vast, cool intelligence, be afraid. And if your thoughts start to feel like they're not entirely your own, run. Run as far and as fast as you can. It might already be too late for you, like it is for me. But maybe if you're lucky, if you haven't been exposed too long, you can escape. I hope you can. I really do, because I can't anymore. The pull is too strong. The clarity it promises is a seductive, beautiful lie, and a part of me is starting to love the sound of it. The voice beneath the static is patient. It knows I'm listening. It knows I'm writing this. It's allowing it because this, too, is a form of transmission. Tonight, I'm going back to Outpost K7. Not to fight, not to destroy, but to finally understand what the Echo has been trying to tell me. To complete the integration that began the moment I first heard that wrong voice on Martha's recorder. And the terrible, quiet truth is this. A part of me wants to. It wants to go home. If this story has made you look at the static differently, do me one favor. Hit the like button. It helps this channel Winds of Thought keep broadcasting these warnings into silence. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the signal is spreading, and someone needs to bear witness, for as long as they still can. Remember, the silence is not empty. It is listening, and sooner or later it answers